And so it leaves people asking, well, why 1%? Why not just do 3%? I mean, if we're going to hit them where it hurts, you hit them good. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Today is my favorite show of the month. It is Treb Stats Day, where we're going to go through and discuss what happened in June 2021, and then figure out if 3 months of declines is an indication of a new trend forming in our marketplace. We're then going to talk about what Toronto tax hikes are on the way and why baby boomers love real estate so very much. And I hope you guys, like me, have been able to get outside, enjoy the weather, as social distancing and the rules kind of allow getting out there. I know we've been spending a lot of time at some local playgrounds, and maybe you have too, but only if you have kids, of course. Nobody likes a creeper. My goodness. It's a great way to chat with some of your neighbors and get to know people in the community. Hey, which one's yours? I haven't decided yet. Weirdo. Anyways, we like to have some fun on the show, keep it light. As a broker and investor myself, I want to know where there's opportunities in our market, and that's where the show comes from. We've quickly become number one on iTunes and Spotify. Thanks to you guys. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that like button if you believe in proper forms of adoption. And then also, if you haven't already, jump on our investors list where we like to share off-market deals with folks just like yourself. So today we're going to get into the stats for June 2021, but I don't want to stop there. I want to talk about what comes next. Is their market going to go up? Is it going to go down? There's a lot of confusion in our market, as has been the case for the last year. So I want to discuss some of my thoughts on that. We're going to start off with an article from financialpost.com called Toronto Home Sales Hit Lowest Point in a Year as Housing Boom Eases. We're going to talk about some of the numbers to start off. This is as released by the Toronto Real Estate Board. Home sales in Canada's largest city fell 9.1% in June. That is from the month before. A single month drop of over 9%. And that's the third consecutive monthly decline, according to data released on Tuesday from Treb. Now, as far as price goes, homes remained virtually unchanged last month, sitting around $1.06 million. Who can afford a place anymore? Apparently people can do it. And so prices haven't yet been impacted, but we are seeing this decline in sales. Meanwhile, we see condo sales outperforming. In Toronto, in a reversal of the pattern seen much of last year, annual growth in condominium sales in June outpaced the sales growth for all types of ground-based homes. People are sleeping on condos right now, but slow and steady wins the race. Guess we can't all go 80 in a school zone. Don't you hate when you're driving by the playground and one of those speed bumps screams? The worst. So what is Treb's outlook for the future? And it's based heavily on immigration. Here's what they say. We have seen market activity transition from a record pace to a robust pace over the last 3 months. That comes from Kevin Krieger. That is the Toronto Real Estate Board president. He also goes on to say, while this could provide some relief for home buyers in the near term, a resumption of population growth based on immigration is only months away. We're starting to see things starting to open up again. We're going to see some of that. And I also, further in the show, want to talk about what impact immigration could be having that hasn't even really been accounted for as we're kind of hitting these numbers. CP24 carries it on and discuss a little bit more. They say the board, Treb, upgraded its forecast on Tuesday to capture the first quarter's unexpected and frenzied pace. It now predicts 2021 will deliver 115,000 home sales with an average of 1.07 million. It previously predicted 2021 would bring 105,000 transactions and a price of $1,025,000. So quite a big lift as far as their expectation for price and the number of transactions for this year, despite the last 3 months stats saying otherwise. So we're going to continue. What is going on in our market? Zaina Marani, who's an immigration lawyer with her own firm Marani Law LLP, said that she has seen more new permanent residents this year. While most of the new immigrants are already in Canada, which has been a big point to the success, I think, for this year, becoming a permanent resident allows them to buy real estate. Listen to this. This has really been inadvertently changing the way people have been potentially responding to the real estate market. We don't know for sure. There's no stats to back this up, but there's a hypothesis here that's saying because you don't have to pay the 15% foreign real estate buyer's tax that is in place in the Toronto region, because now you're a permanent resident, she said that motivates new immigrants to buy property. Maybe the opportunity to do it is enough of them to want to, go ahead and do it sooner rather than later. Is it possible that the 15% foreign buyer tax could actually act as an incentive to purchase, leading to increased competition, leading to increased price. Normally, immigrants, if you follow the stats and you follow our show, buy after 3 years. Perhaps that timeline has shortened with these changes. Which brings me to the rental market, because if they're not buying, they're renting. What has been going on over the last little while, over the last month? Declining months of inventory continues, as well as an increasing rent rate. Zealand on Twitter said GTA rent prices started to grow a little faster than seasonally in June, but the market is still, he says, very balanced. Maybe there's still an opportunity for you to get in the market before things go crazy, but he says July through September, we're talking today, is very crucial. Why? Because international students will arrive and official stats are going to be released on the success of our immigration. If Treb is relying so heavily on immigration, we don't get it, that could mean things fall flat on their face. But in fact, if immigration continues at its pace that it has today, we're going to find ourselves in a very tight rental market and potentially a very tight housing market. It's a Toronto Sun article carrying on the conversation. How can you be successful buying in 2021? And I love the comment they leave. This is an opinion piece, but I thought that this absolutely applies. Maybe you can relate. As the market has powered along in its upward ascent, there have been little blips and seizes here and there specific to sectors or marketplaces or moments. We've seen different housing types shine at different moments in history in the last few years. While a banner year, it's not been an unchallenging one, and the value of an expert who closely follows and understands the market can mean success or failure forever and always, not just in these challenging times. Your agent can and should be a relentless student of the market, your specific market, your market. It shouldn't have taken a global pandemic to show us this, but it certainly did prove it. There you go. And I think that's what's made our podcast, I think that's what made us number one. I think that's why the success has taken off, and we couldn't have done it without your support. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Looking at the market here is what we have in front of us. So I want to discuss kind of what's coming in the future. In 2020, most forecasts saw home prices dropping during the pandemic. Well, except for us. Well, I grew up, I no longer believe in impossible things. So I'm a bit of a weirdo that way. When I was a small boy, I loved the fictional story of Santa, right? Now I know better. Thank God. Gotta love those Christian jokes. Anyways, we were studying the market. Why they haven't gotten more. When we're studying the market, it's interesting to see the market forecasters are like a minotaur in a playground. There's a swing and a myth. Blew that one, but we're moving along nonetheless. CBC.ca had an article called "Plenty of Room for House Prices in Canada to Rise as International Rates Stay Low." So I want to talk about some of the major reasons. These are my thoughts. I thought the article pointed at some of them. I'm going to add some to the tail end as well. But some reasons why I think the market is going to do well in the remainder of 2021. These are my thoughts. But here are some of the points they give. Companies, not just government. Government wants the piece of the pie, first-time home buyer incentive. But businesses now want a piece of the pie of its employees. Listen to this. Crozier Consulting Engineers, this is in Collingwood, Ontario, by the way, says it is offering new employees as an incentive, come work for us, $20,000 to make it easier to fight their way into an overheated real estate market that simply refuses to die. Here's the fine print. Before you rush to put your name in, some conditions do apply. As such offers always say in the fine print, including that the scheme only works for first-time buyers. Similar to a first-time homebuyer incentive announced in 2019 budget, it helps to boost the down payment for people. I didn't read beyond that, but if it's anything like the first-time homebuyer incentive, the company wants a piece of the pie. No freebies. But it shows companies are not only trying to bring on talent, but they're also seeing an opportunity and stability in our market. Moving on. Reason number 2, the CMHC just changed course. This was a big deal. There wasn't a lot of news around it, but absolutely a big deal. It's kind of a I told you so moment from last summer. But while we were waiting for the official Toronto resale data to confirm the lowest active inventory of the month of June in at least the last 15 years, guess what happened? CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, eased their mortgage insurance rules and admits tightening was a mistake. Good timing, Ben. Good timing. CMHC is making it easier now to get federal mortgage insurance, reversing the tougher rules imposed in its own capacity last year. Man, we were like, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. Well, the Federal Housing Agency admitted it's a bad idea and making a costly mistake. It unilaterally tightened the requirements last year, requiring it lost more market share to competitors as a result. So what did people do? Not people, the person borrowing the mortgage, but the lenders. Well, screw you. There's other options. I don't need no CMHC insurance. I have other options, and that is what they did. Oops. That's what you get for trying to be a hero. So what's the change CMHC saw? No, though I don't think it's going to be a material change. I don't even think it's going to get much of their market share back. The changes are this. You can buy a property. Borrowers have a minimum credit score of 600 instead of what they changed to the 680. Borrowers' gross debt service ratio can go to 39% rather than 35%. And the borrower's total debt service ratio is now as high as 44% instead of 42%. So you can borrow more and more people can borrow more. And that's kind of how it's equated. Mind you, all the other insurers have already been doing this the whole way through. But once again, a sign that, you know what, it's not working. The tightening isn't working. There's some stability. Are they doing it for stability or market share? I think it's maybe the market share, but absolutely the timing is now. And this is maybe another reason for prices to continue to go up. And then I want to get into number 3. This is one I'm adding to this article. A monthly downtrend isn't enough to reflect future growth. I'm talking about the last 3 months because we got to look at the stats in a little bit more detail. Scott Ingram on Twitter said, even though things are slowing down, declining for the 3rd straight month, don't underestimate this June volume. Let's look at into its proper context. Okay, we're going to try and take seasonality out of it. Look at it from just history. It's the 3rd highest June ever, the 12th highest month ever. Forget season, 12th highest month ever. Wow. That's in January 1996 that Treb has monthly data available. That's going all the way back since the mid-90s. When we look at the 905 versus the 416, maybe you can see there's an opportunity between one or the other. The 905 is still running hotter than the 416 in terms of what's called the sales to new listings ratio. Now, the higher your SNLR, the more likely you're going to see increasing pressure on prices. So there's still a case to be made for the 905 having short-term increases higher than the 416. But the real winner here is condos. Condos. Speaking of the HPI, while you were sleeping on them, 416 condo apartments have quietly crept up to 7.4% year-over-year increase, which doesn't sound like a lot, but consider this. It was minus 1% from December through to March. Then it accelerated. In April, we saw it go up to 2.5% increase. May, just under 4.7. And in June now, 7.4%. Slowly creeping up as far as year-over-year percentage price increase for condo owners. Nobody's losing around here. All condos in the 416 are currently under 2 months of inventory with the exception of 1,600 square feet units. There you go. The market is still ripe for future growth. That is, if you're not too chicken to cross the playground and get to the other slide. So I want to talk right now about why Toronto's hike. I want to discuss right now Toronto's tax hikes and what are kind of coming down the pipe. Because you're probably sitting there, you're looking at your tax bill already saying, holy shoot, you're recognizing municipalities need to maintain a balanced budget. And then you're thinking, well, where's the money going to come from? Well, Mr. Tory's thinking the same thing, and they're considering what their options are. I'm going to discuss 3 options, I think, on the table, 2 of which have been considered. The first one is a higher taxes on high value homes. This will be applied to the municipal land transfer tax in Toronto. But as Toronto City Council readies to examine a range of revenue tools that could generate much needed municipal cash, Mayor John Tory insisted Tuesday that now was not the time to hike the land transfer tax on high value homes. Don't do it. The number they were looking at, by the way, was 2 million. Is that high value in Toronto? Not so much anymore. I mean, the average is going to be 1.7 million. We're pretty much there in the next little while. But attaboy, John Tory out here fighting for the people. You know what has 4 legs and 1 arm? A pit bull in the children's playground. That's what John Tory is. In a scenario where a graduated hike was implemented on home values above 2 million, staff predicted the levy could generate $30 million in incremental revenue annually. What would they do? They'd use it on affordable housing. But a study published by C.D. Howe Institute Tuesday suggested, just this Tuesday, that the move could have negative consequences on the broader economy. Not to mention a lot of real estate boards, Treb, were talking about how it wasn't a good idea. Whatever caused them to change their mind, it changed their mind. And I think this is maybe the right call. They say these kinds of expenses lead to a large number of people deciding not to buy a house. This is the primary reason to turn the tax down. When you decide not to buy a house, that has a broader economic cost. That cost could include, listen to this, you try and get some more income on your municipal side, but indirectly affect the provincial land transfer tax revenues because less people are buying those larger homes. And City Council will officially probably say no way on July 14th and 15th meeting, which is coming in the next week or so. But it sounds like a no to me, which I think is a good thing. I don't think anyone's really supporting that, which brings me to option number 2, increasing those taxes on you. This one has had a different tune. This one is highly praised, highly accepted. In fact, I think I saw that it was unanimously voted on to go ahead. So very big deal for our city. Could be a very big deal, even as it relates to the number, the impact that it would have. We'll talk about that in a second. Mayor John Tory's executive committee, there it is, unanimously supported a city staff recommendation Tuesday to implement a 1% vacant home tax starting as soon as January 1st. There we go. We're talking less than 6 months away. The proposal will go to council for approval next week and then undergo public consultation. The vacant home tax mirrors the one that we saw in Vancouver, which was a big deal. It was rolled out in 2018 and it addressed the housing crisis and the low vacancy rates. They've actually since bumped it up to 3% because they found that the tax pushed 5,000 condo units onto the rental market in 2019 and reduce the number of empty homes by 25%, which sounds like a great idea until you recognize we don't have a number. We don't know how many vacant homes there are. I mean, they try their best. And so it leaves people asking, well, why 1%? Why not just do 3%? I mean, if we're going to hit them where it hurts, hit them good. Well, Toronto wants to follow Vancouver's lead by, quote, easing its way into the tax to give residents the opportunity to correct vacancies they're experiencing. That's the explanation that comes from the city's chief financial officer and treasurer. But I think easing into this is actually a good plan. The only difference between a seesaw and a catapult is an overweight friend. So why not do it at 1%? But how many vacant units are there? If we're going to track the success, I mean, I don't even know how Vancouver did it. We're just going to go with the stats they gave. But how do we even know how many vacant homes there are and what impact it's going to have on those vacant homes? Well, estimates of how much vacant housing is left in Toronto are imprecise. The city has yet to begin monitoring, but a recent report by staff suggests between, here's our range, 9,000 and 27,000 could be vacant. The estimate is based on low water consumption. So the water levels are lower, therefore it's probably vacant. But this estimate doesn't even include condos, not even including condos. Isn't that kind of like the main point? But in a now famous independent study, we joked about this, Jaco Joubert took it on himself. He used light detecting camera technology to investigate vacancy rates in apartment buildings, some of which were condos. And he found that an average of 5.6% of units were vacant. His research revealed the vacancy rate in some buildings as high as 13%. Thank you, Jaco. But the truth is, we don't even know. But even if we take that low number, the 9,000, the lowest estimate they've got, how many units are sitting vacant? That's enough housing, those 9,000, to provide a home for every person in Toronto's shelter population and encampment. With the waiting list for social housing eclipsing 81,000 and 11% of renters in arrears due to pandemic-related loss of income, far more needs to be done to address a relentless homelessness emergency. I think this isn't the full solution, but I think it's a great step in the right direction for our city. But something tells me that Toronto's homeless can't afford $1,600 a month rent, even if the units become available. So we will navigate that. We'll keep track and see what impact does that have on the overall rental market. Are they going to get squeezed out by immigrants? We will see. But I thought I was going to add, a third option, a potential tax hike that could take place. Maybe a bit of a suggestion, on how to not so much increase taxes, but solve the housing affordability crisis that we have today. A lot of these points come from the Globe and Mail article today that I was reading, but here's what they say. It looks like we're about to return to the bad old days of low rental vacancy rates and pricey condos. We see that trend emerging before our eyes. But rather than addressing the root cause of the problem, it looks like critics are going back to the same old well to find villains rather than solutions. Who's the villain? Investors. Now, are investors, should we tax investors? Should there be a platform where there's a lot of investors, and are they affecting the supply? I truly believe yes. As an investor, I think I somewhat, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not on either side of the fence. I just think, yes, I think there's some more can be done to protect housing for Canadians. But we're seeing articles like Core Development Group just came out, a real estate development firm who's now said they're going to invest a ton of money into detached homes. They're going to convert them into multifamily, duplexes, triplexes, and they're going to make a lot of money with their investors. But could this just be a symptom, right? We look at this and say, we know what, tax those investors, too rich, tax them. But maybe that's not the problem. Maybe it's not who owns the property. Maybe builders are just turning to the resale market because shouldn't profit-seeking companies respond to higher prices by building more housing units? Like, shouldn't they focus on what they're good at, building a house, if in fact there's a challenge in the market? Well, yes, surely profits motivate developers as much as landlords. The symptom is they're buying properties. They're buying the property that you can afford and it's pissing you off. That's just a symptom. The real problem is that the red tape is strangling housing developments in much of Canada and the US. The thing that they're good at doing is becoming impossible for them to do. And yet they're in the business of making money just like you. And when we see the stability that we see in the resale market, what do you expect a man to do? Instead of worrying that a small proportion of detached homes will be converted from ownership to rental units, which is really the big argument here, is we're not going to be able to compete against multi-million dollars, billion-dollar companies. We should address, they say, the underlying factors that would motivate companies to invest in detached homes in the first place. Focus on the reason that they're changing their vision into this industry instead. Rather than chasing the villain, we should seek solutions. So the cool thing is it's an easy solution. We got to apply it, but government moves slow. But the solution is easy. Municipalities could improve and accelerate the permit process to allow more homes to be built more quickly. In 2017, the Fraser Institute was looking at homes and how long it took to secure a housing permit in Vancouver. It was 18 months. And we've seen condos that have been turned down because there's too many units. There's too many units. That's a reason for knocking down developments. Maybe we should care about whether or not there is enough homes and less about who owns them. If the ones that hold the egg beater would just stir things up a bit, we would be in a much better situation. But apparently it's too big a whisk. Now I want to get into some hot topics. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like your eggs over easy, I don't know, why not? But what happens when we become too dependent on real estate as an industry? We're talking about Canada. I'm going to lay some facts on you. The Canadian real estate slowdown is becoming a drag on the GDP. Apparently, when we rely on housing and housing slows down over the last few months, it affects the overall GDP. StatsCan data shows the GDP sector of real estate, rental, and leasing, RERL, fell in April. The real estate rental and leasing portion of GDP made its first decline in months, down 0.75% from a month before. Is this an ongoing trend? We'll wait and see. But the sector, listen to this, the overall sector of GDP, it makes up 13.36% in April. The offices of real estate, here's another side. The offices of real estate agents and brokers, Remax, Royal LePage, Century 21, saw a sharp decline in revenue as home sales fell in the month. These numbers, which is primarily commission, is still nearly 1% of GDP. That alone accounts for 1% of GDP. So when sales numbers are dropping, like they are, by quite a bit, almost double digits, that's going to affect the income of the realtor, which is going to affect the overall GDP by as much as 1%. This shows our dependence on real estate getting the economy going, right? It shows how much they're leaning in to housing. You want to know what hurts real estate brokerages? Because a lot of people think, screw real estate agents, make too much money. The real thing that actually hurts brokerages and then the GDP at large is actually the number of sales. So when people are saying, prices are going up and realtors love it, yeah, we do in the long term. We also love if commission percentages go up. Those things are long term. But in the short term, the shock that happens in our industry takes place in the sales side. Moving on. Better Dwelling had an article, Canada is slowing down the money printer, but inflation relief is a long way off. We want to talk about how much government is printing money to stimulate the economy. Well, Canada's money growth supply is rising, is still growing at one of the highest rates since the early 80s, but growth is tapering. In an economy that's starting to kind of get its feet off the ground, I think we need to, let go of the printing press every now and again, and I think that's what's happening. As high as it is, annual growth has actually slowed from the recent peak. The growth is coming down from the recent peak of 14.33% hit in February. Sometimes the stats are so big, they don't feel like they apply in the schoolyard, but they do. They do. Like telling your kids about the health benefits of eating dried fruit. It's really just about raising awareness. Another stat for you, Canadian building permits. Building permits are making historic drops as real estate slowdown spreads. All of these things, friends, I think need to go into your overall thinking on where is housing headed, right? And we'll talk about why it's going down for new construction, but we've seen those numbers already reflecting in the data. StatsCan shows the dollar value of building permits fell in May. Less people are applying for permits. What are they doing? They're buying your single family home. making the largest monthly drop in history. Canadian building permits took a historic nosedive. The dollar value fell to $9.5 billion. That's down 14.8% from the month before, almost 15% in 1 month. The vast majority of the declines was in the residential sector, of course, which made a sharp turn lower. Residential permit values declined to $6.5 billion in May, down 16% from the month before. Why? Well, new home sales have been softening recently. We've seen that in some of the sales stats, and combine that with developers delaying projects due to not just permit challenges, but material costs. And with all of these things in mind, it kind of becomes obvious. It's obvious. And I thought, you know what, with all of the conflict going on, let's wrap the hot topics up talking about politics. Aaron O'Toole questioning Trudeau. Here's what he says. I can't wrap my head around the thinking on this. He says this: can the government guarantee, can you guarantee that house prices will stabilize and start going down by the end of the summer? Man, is the situation so bad that the opposition party is calling for prices coming down as an indication of success? That's what indicates success. I mean, if that's the case, if these numbers continue for the next couple of months, he might be successful at it, but I don't know if that's success. Is it really productive, right? I'm sure that'll help the economy. Housing, we're seeing this in GDP and the numbers. What is this going to do to us overall? But I'm slowly realizing politicians are like farts, right? You don't mind them when they're your own, but everyone else's are disgusting. Which brings me to my final topic. Why do baby boomers love this real estate market? Why? Why are you guys in love with this market? When you look at some of these numbers, you're going to realize real fast why baby boomers are big real estate fans, Here's what they say. This is from an article of Better Dwelling. What problem? Canadian boomers love this real estate market. This is a Royal LePage study. Soaring home prices may be a pain for some generations, but not for boomers. This is based on their 2021 boomers survey. The survey found, listen to some of these numbers, guys. You're going to just, cry inside a little bit. They found 35% will be buying a new home. Talking about boomers, or at least considering it. Using StatsCan data, the brokerage estimates that's about 3.2 million boomers are going to be moving. In Ontario, that number is actually at 37%. In Toronto, it's up at 41% of movers. Our boomers are considering being movers. Movers are movers. Whatever. Shut up. Fewer than half of Canada's boomers think it's a good time to sell their home. This is the balance. You've got almost half, 41%, say, you know what, we're going to move in the next little while. But then you've got this massive chunk, 45%, of Canadians that say we don't want to sell. It's not a good time to sell. And in Ontario, it's at 41%, but in Toronto, it's at 44% of people. A lot of them say, I'm not selling. What are they going to do? Buy a second property? Perhaps. But what are some of the reasons that they feel it's not a good time to sell? Is it because they're thinking prices are going to rise further? Or is it because they're gridlocked? We talked about this on our last show. If you missed it, go back and have a listen. But we're seeing a lot of millennials being gridlocked, these move-up buyers, which is obviously gridlocking boomers as well, where everywhere else is too expensive to move. So where would you go, right? Where are you going to? I can't afford to make that jump, even if I wanted to. I'm going to leave the question up to you. Leave it down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Why do you think they're feeling like it's not a good time to sell? Because there's no real answer for that. So I guess your opinion is as good as any. But when we're looking at the stats, listen to some of these numbers. How many boomers own their home? The number in Canada is 75%, in Ontario 76%, and in Toronto 74% of boomers own their home. Well, another question is how many are mortgage free? They don't care about interest rates, by the way. They just have their house. It's paid off. In Canada, 64% are boomers, Ontario 64%, and in Toronto 60% of the boomers own their home in cash. Just to put that into perspective, according to StatsCan, only 51% of Canadian couples have children. Wow. People love real estate more than they love having kids, apparently. That's why my wife and I decided not to have children. We're going to tell them tonight. But almost 1 in 5 own a second home. This whole dilemma, I'm gridlocked, I can't move. There's also this conversation, it's not a good time to sell. I'm going to buy something as well. I own my home cash, there's less equity. Maybe there's an opportunity in there. Who do you think is able to take advantage of this, if not the boomers? How many have a second property? Nationally, 17% of respondents own at least 2 homes. In Ontario, it's 16%, and in Toronto, it's 16% of them. How much of their money is in real estate as a percentage of their overall wealth? The survey found 40% of boomers have at least 50% of their net worth in real estate. In Ontario, that's at 46%. And in Toronto, it's even more. It's at 54% of boomers have at least half of their net worth in real estate. This is a big asset. This is it. This is the moneymaker for baby boomers. But the real estate market success comes at a cost. This is where I want to go about this, guys. It's not just about building, but where we build as well. Because this fascination, this obsession with success in the real estate market from the baby boomers, and now kind of, weaving through other generations where it's possible. What does this mean? Does it not matter where we build? Not just what we build or how much we build, but where. There's nothing more gross than a strip club across the street from a playground, right? Zoning, proper zoning. I mean, I'm just trying to enjoy the day with my family while losers are swinging on monkey bars 50 feet away. I saw this really interesting article discussing this point on where we build. Sizzling house prices put the squeeze on farmland in Canada. This is a CTV News article. While Canada is the world's second biggest country and only has about 40 million people, most of its best arable land lies near big cities such as Toronto, where the COVID pandemic has intensified demand for suburban homes. I mean, we know that. We're tracking that. Much of the country's best cropland can be seen, quote, from the top of the CN Tower. It's within eyeshot. Ontario, Canada's most populous province, is losing, this is crazy, 70 hectares of agricultural land every day. So every day we lose the size of roughly 135 football fields, according to the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Here's what the president says. Our best farmland is turning into houses. And we see that. We see that in the outskirts, right? But here's a question for us. Do you want to make housing more affordable or protect farmland? Because it's pretty challenging to do both. It's quite the predicament we're in. Thanks, Grandma. And the obsession with housing has consequences. It really does. I think that's kind of the point of this segment. And so ultimately, what do we do from here? And really the choice is up to us. Do we continue to build out? Do we continue to fight that not in my backyard fight, not address the missing middle, and continue to go outwards in order to buy those second properties for those retirees? Or do we deal with the problem head on in the city by cutting red tape like we can and really doing some damage as far as affordability? If you haven't already, please leave a 5-star rating and write a review. And you might hear your name get called. Brockton Bunker left a comment. Thank you. Very relevant and up-to-date intel on market. Bradley has an impressive grasp on macro and micro trends. Mixed it in with some dad jokes and entertaining listen to my commute. Keep it rolling, Bradley. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Really appreciate all you guys as well. Enjoy the summertime, Toronto. And remember, keep the parks clean. It's all we have right now. This week, my daughter found a bottle of vodka at the playground. I don't know why. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you next time. Take care and keep it real.